that anyone can do it. So I would highly recommend it, even if it's a, I mean, I spoke to Dan about speaking tonight. This is a very non-technical talk. And it's really not even about WordPress as such. In fact, this was the original title that I did for this talk when I spoke in Europe back in Sofia in 2014.
Yeah.
And really what I wanted to talk about was working for yourself, but working for yourself with WordPress. And how I eventually did that after about 5 years of doing other things and eventually focused on a single path. But there's also some things that I've tweaked a little bit, and it's about contributing to WordPress, it's about speaking at events like this, and it's about going to events like this, because only then will you really mature as within the WordPress community. And if you focus on a single platform, more about that later, then you will be ultimately happier in the way that you do project work for either yourself or clients. So this was the original title, and then I threw this together when, because it is a 10-step guide. So just to be clear, this is a small section of a larger talk that I did in Sofia. If you want to see the larger one, it's on WordPress TV. You can Google my name and WordCamp Sofia, and it comes up. It's not actually much long, but this section is in there. And this is the section I got the most good feedback from. So after the talk, I had a few people approach me and say, those 10 things that you put in there were probably the things that stood out the most. So I got rid of all the other junk and just focused on this. So as Dan said, this is me. I am the managing director, wonderful title, and co-founder of MakeDo, but I also do a lot of other things. When you work in a small business, small agency, you can't just do one thing. I'm a designer, front-end developer, and also lead event organizer. We were actually an events company, or tried to be an events company before we decided to start doing WordPress development. And I still have to do all of those things, as well as all the business development and running the day-to-day sort of things that I never imagined I would actually do. I'm from a small town in Yorkshire called Barnsley, if you're wondering about the accent. Anyone else from Barnsley? I always ask that, no one ever puts that. We don't have a bustling WordPress community, but fortunately we are buffeted by Sheffield on one side and Leeds on the other. So I run WordPress Sheffield, which is this, but in Sheffield. It's been going for about 5 years. It's obviously a lot smaller than this, and we're trying to alter it this year as well and go a little bit more inclusive. Leeds also have their own WordPress event. Tim's involved in that. I don't think anyone else here from the Leeds crew, are they?
No, they're all getting drunk.
No, they're all at the other event. So, yeah, we try and split things around and go to the Leeds event and the Sheffield event. And also occasionally you can see Manchester over there. That's where our senior developer Dave's from, and he's going to be speaking next. I really wanted to highlight that it doesn't matter where you're from in our industry as such, because we work remotely, so we work from home. You can work in a shack on the beach as long as you've got a Wi-Fi connection. And for a long time, it seemed like living and working in a small town like Barnsley was a bit of a pain in the arse because nothing was going on. It's a real digital wasteland. And it wasn't until I started to meet other people that maybe not worked in towns similar to me, but worked elsewhere and remote worked, that you understand that as long as you've got an internet connection and you've made the right connections with clients, then it doesn't matter where you live or work. So, my previous life was here in the NHS. Oh gosh, yeah. Europe's largest employer. And I worked in a hospital called Barnsley Hospital, surprisingly. I spent a long time here, and I had the privilege of building the first NHS Foundation Trust website in WordPress. This was the version that I left it with. It looked quite different in 2007 when we launched the first version. And I always said that I wouldn't be here, and I probably wouldn't be using WordPress as much today if it wasn't for the fact that we'd fallen into needing a system to build a website. And I was like, well, I know how to use WordPress. So we had to build this new website in a really short time, and I pretty much did all of the work. It got quite a lot of interest on the WordPress showcase back in the day, and it's still there. Even though the version that I left was 3 years ago. and they've bastardized it since then. But it's still on the showcase, and if you Google something like NHS WordPress, it's the first result that comes up. So that was really the start for me. After building this site, I was invited to speak at WordCamps and invited to talk about my experience in the community. But when I was in NHS, it was a split role. I spent about 5 or 6 years in IT or web.
Which one were you?
Probably a mixture of all three, really. But then I was lucky enough to move over to the marketing and digital team, which was much sexier and a lot more fun. This was the problem with web. No one really knew where to put it. Was it an IT thing or was it a marketing thing? I always say that it is a marketing and digital thing, the website. Even the intranet, that's really where it should live. IT should really be fixing printers and reinstalling Windows. They shouldn't touch websites. And I left as part of the marketing and digital team, and again, that's where we got most of the WordPress stuff done, once we sort of cut the cord from IT. And I was just saying to Tim before I started, this is really the most important thing that I'm going to say, is that I really don't know what I'm doing. So, you shouldn't take any advice from me with a very large spoon of salt. But it's fine, because if you speak to someone who runs a business or has done any sort of development work in WordPress or has contributed to WordPress and they were like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing, then they're lying or they're delusional, because no one really knows what they're doing in this industry because it changes so much, and you've really just got to find your way forward and work it out for yourself. So I don't have all the answers, I just have some of them. And I found out soon enough that there is no formula to working out what you want to do as either a WordPress developer or running a WordPress company. You've just got to work it out for yourself. And if you embrace the unknowns, that is, you go out there and just work out things that you didn't even understand in the first place that you'd end up doing. And that again, I started out thinking that we'd be some sort of WordPress events company, which lasted about 6 months before we realised there was no money in it. But we didn't know that until we tried it. So on to the 10-step guide. So there's a slide for each of these with a little bit of a story around each one and a couple of anecdotes, but again, nothing of any true substance, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. So the first one is that your ideas will kill you. What I mean by that is that you need to focus on a single path. My problem has always been that I have all these ideas, like I wanted to build a WordPress theme marketplace like ThemeForest. It was called Wonder Themes. Spent 2 years building it. By the time I finished it, I didn't want to even work on it. I spent a lot of money hiring developers to build it. It was a big mistake, terrible idea. We were going to build, at one point, some sort of WordPress for weddings website. We were doing lots of stuff, because we had all these great ideas, and we've still got them now. But now we realise that ideas are great, but they need to go on the back burner, and the thing you need to focus on is what you do best. And for us, that's doing WordPress development and client work and working with other agencies. And to highlight this, I've got all of these logos from when we first started. So the business is actually called MakeDo. MakeDo is just a trade name. Originally we tried to be some big conglomerate that on the right-hand side here under the MakeDo, the original MakeDo brand was for an event. We ran conferences called the Digital Barn Front End North, a hack event called HackDo, and something called DoerConf, which was a non-WordPress event that never really got off the ground because we realised that, again, it wouldn't be profitable to run it. The agency side of things was called Digital Origami, and then we had something called Make Micro, which was a bit like, let me think, the Skoda to our Volkswagen. So any clients that had a very small budget, we would say, all right, we'll sell you a very cheap WordPress theme and skin it, and that's Make Micro. Terrible idea. Having all these split ideas and wasting a lot of time on events that don't bring any revenue is a lot of fun, but you've got to focus on a single brand and a single idea. And eventually we got there with MakeDo and turned it into a WordPress-focused agency. You'll also need an advisor or a mentor. And this is Steve. He's actually our accountant, but also our main chief financial officer, or whatever you want to call him. And without him, we'd probably be in prison. So we spent a year without an accountant, and then when he looked at our books, he was like, whoa. So without him, we'd have to stay up late worrying about finances, accounts, things like that. And he's really great because he lets us focus on what we need to do best, and that isn't looking at a balance sheet. You've then got to hang with the right people. And if you're here tonight, then you're doing the right thing. If you hang around with people from the Drupal community, then you'll become a Drupal developer. And nobody wants that. So please, stick, again, come to WordPress meetups, come to WordPress conferences, digital conferences. If you need to network for sales, go to these fun networking breakfast meetings that are all the rage. But make sure that you talk to the right people and don't waste your time with the wrong people. Because by meeting other people, I was at, when you're at a big WordCamp event, you can walk up to someone like Yoast, the SEO plugin guy, and he's just a normal, approachable human being. He isn't this sort of completely unapproachable person. He's just like you. And when you speak to someone in that context, you realise, all right, well, if they can do it, then why can't I? And this is where WordCamp can ultimately change your life. This is a picture from WordCamp Leiden in the Netherlands. I went here and I was still employed, and when I left here and the flight landed back home, I handed in my notice in 2 weeks later and left the job that I had in the NHS, and I had no clients, I had no leads, and I had no real idea what I was doing, but I knew that I couldn't work there anymore, and I needed to go off and do my own thing. So by hanging with the right people, you will probably find your better path. And then fail. Oh yes, this poor dog has failed. I failed with Wonder Themes. Again, I did that really while I was working full time. It was a massive failure, both emotionally and financially. But you should embrace mistakes, because if you fail and you learn something from it, then you've not really failed. We fail putting bids in for work all the time. It's the nature of business. Failure is the nature of. We might spend weeks working on a certain WordPress thing and then realise it's just not going anywhere, so we failed, but at least we learned something along the way. So again, going back to the Wonder Themes thing, the ultimate failure for me wasn't the fact that we didn't have a finished platform to use. It was just that by the end of it all, I was so exhausted by the process that I didn't want to be someone who was known for running a WordPress theme marketplace. So the failure there was just a lack of understanding as to what that entailed. And don't do it alone. I've got a very grand note here in front of me that says, there'd be no Apple without Wozniak. There'd be no Google without Larry and Sergey. And there'd be no MakeDo. Unfortunately, Matt isn't here tonight because he's just had back surgery, so he's back at our flat relaxing. But this is Matt, and I wish he was here because I was going to tell this wonderful anecdote about when we went to the U-Belly Awards. We were a brand new agency, and they invited us to this award show, and they said, you've got to wear a tuxedo. So we went down to London, drove down, we got there in a tuxedo, parked the car in one of those multi-story car parks, and because we had no money, we stayed in a hostel shared with 6 other guys that we didn't know. And then we were fully, the awards ceremony finished, we got back to the car park and it was locked. So we couldn't get our bags or anything from out of the car. So we had to sleep in our tuxedos in the hostel. And all these drunk guys came in at like 3, 4 in the morning, and we were like in tuxedos in bed. And they were like, what the? So we got very little sleep, and in the morning looked like this. So yeah, but yeah, this is what you've got to do. We needed to go to this, we've been invited to this award ceremony, because one of our events was nominated. But we just we couldn't afford a swanky hotel, and we couldn't, really afford the train fare down, so I drove us down and everything. But it was a bit of a disaster, but a nice anecdote to tell. And if you're ignorant, it's no bad thing. Ignorance is bliss, and it really is. I have ignorance walls, so if someone talks to me about something that I'm ignorant about, then I just switch off. And these days, it's generally when people start to talk about programming, PHP, advanced WordPress backend stuff. I mean, the REST API, for example, I understand the applications of it and some of the technology around it, but I know that I'll never sit down and write code that interacts with it, because it's just not where my true passion and skills are. And honestly, writing code over the years for me has been one of the most frustrating and least rewarding things about WordPress. And that's not the case for everyone in this room. People like writing code and they can do things a lot faster and a lot better than I can. Now I just try my best to work on things that I'm better at and have a natural talent with, and that's generally design, front end, but most of the time, because we are again such a small agency, it's just running the business and doing some of the event stuff and marketing and things like that. So I don't have time to learn how to really code for the REST API, even if I wanted to. But the point is, I don't want to. I'm completely ignorant about the actual application of it, but I've got an understanding about it. And an analogy that we used to use when I was in the NHS is, no one knows how to use the photocopy apart from the secretaries at Trust HQ, because no one can be bothered learning how to do it, because they're completely ignorant. And yeah, you could spend an hour trying to work, because they were really old, terrible photocopies. You could spend an hour trying to work it out, but why bother if you're only going to use it that one time? And if it's not really part of your day job. So be ignorant about, using a photocopy, for example. And again, going back to Steve, our accountant, we're totally ignorant about things like tax. We understand the implications of not paying your tax bill, which, again, that's why we're not in prison right now. But we let him take care of all that, and we pay him so that we don't have to think about it. So you can do this. There's something that's epidemic at the moment called imposter syndrome, and it's just bullshit. It's yourself tricking yourself into thinking that you aren't good enough. And the only way I can see out of this is get out there and meet people. Meet other people that are like you and doing the things that you want to do, and realise that they're no better or the same as you. And the good thing is, confidence if it doesn't come naturally, you can learn it. So you can learn how to be confident, or at least fake it. And if you're confident enough, then you should at least, go far. And the main thing I was going to mention here is, how many people wanted to maybe contribute to WordPress? So, show of hands, yeah? I will guarantee the first step is getting over the initial confidence problem. So you've probably got the technical skills, but you're worried, maybe I'll get laughed out of the room because I'll put in a patch and people will say, oh, that's ridiculous. But the only way that you'll learn is by getting over that initial problem with confidence. And the same with public speaking. Dave, who was going to be up next, had never done any sort of public speaking until we hired him. And he had some real confidence problems around doing that. But as you'll see, he's really good at it. So you've got to try and have confidence about all areas of what you do. Don't rush. I will be 37 years old in 3 weeks' time. I didn't really even know what starting business was till I was 30, 32 years old. It was just alien to me. I spent my 20s having fun, which was great. I had very little responsibilities. I had a job that was easy. So, what changed? When you get to 30, the clock starts ticking and you're like, oh God, this is my legacy. So, but you don't rush it. There really is no rush. You can start a business, you can work in an industry at any age. Pricing's tough. Oh my God. The easiest thing is the day rate. Now everyone knows that how much you're willing to charge per day. You can bundle day rates together and say I'll do 10 days for X amount. Unfortunately, as I learned from Heather Burns, we're not allowed to stand here and say that I charge X amount a day and you should charge X amount a day because it's illegal. So let's move on from that and talk about price framing, which is a system that you can also use when you're either bidding or taking on work. And it's in 3 rates. You've got your premium rate, your standard rate, which you should always aim for, and then your value rate. So your premium rates for, we do a lot, try at least to do a lot of work with the NHS and public sector, and they're generally on our premium rate because we know that it's going to be very difficult, occasionally undesirable, purely because of the nature of the beast. However, all clients that you can work well with and get things done should be on your standard rate. And that is something that you need to decide on whether or not you're doing it on a day rate and then adding it up, or whether it's value-based. So that's charging them what you think that your services are worth to them. Price C is your lower stuff, doing it for charities, taking on a job at low rate in the anticipation or hope that you'll be able to build it up. But obviously not working for peanuts or working for free, but at least getting something so that you maybe can build your portfolio. And then finally, you need to always learn. It's obvious to everyone in this room, because why else would you come out here on a Thursday night unless you wanted to learn something? So you're going to learn about the customizer, you learn how to put a plugin in the .org repo, you learn how to update your site your site's copyright date earlier. Maybe you didn't know how to do that until tonight. That's great, that's why you came here. And we were at the Day of Rest conference earlier, and we went there to learn things, because it's the best way to learn is to get out and meet people. And I stuck one more in at the end, because I realised that this wasn't in there. And it's about WordPress. So you need to know the platform. And then I know WordPress incredibly well, because I've been using it for, well, since 2005, so what, 11 years nearly? So it's obviously changed a lot since I started to use it when it was quite simple and easy to build for. But I still know the fundamentals and everything and can sell it to clients. And don't love the platform for what it is, because it's got its failings. Love it for everything that it can do for you. And if you look at this tweet from Carl Hancock, who runs the Rocket Genius company, who build gravity forms, he said, if you roll your own obscure CMS, it won't be supported down the road. Now, we've all done that. I built my first CMS with ASP.NET using an Access database on some Windows hosting way back in the day, and I thought I was Superman. It was great. But really, how long is that going to last? How secure is that? And if you give that to a client, are they ever going to be able to take that to someone else and get it matured? At least if you use WordPress for all its problems and failings, it's an open platform. Anyone in this room, hopefully, should be able to pick up a project and move with it. So I came to the idea that you're either a genius or an idiot if you build your own CMS. Now, there are geniuses out there that have successfully gone on and built their own CMSs. Ghost, for example, is a new one, a new publishing platform that was kickstarted. But I'm not a genius. I know that I probably could cobble together some form of CMS, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose wisely and stick with WordPress. So thank you.